Now, my personal encounter was with the railroad station. They built a tall wooden fence there, and nobody was permitted to approach the fence. The word was out that they had machine guns lined up alongside the fence and the street which paralleled the railroad tracks. But even then, you see, I was not so much afraid of the machine guns as, my discipline. I did not have permission to sneak up on the railroad station. I had permission to go and get something from the city, buy something. But I sneaked up to the fence, and I was in my cassock. So I really stood out there because I looked left and right, but I didn't see anybody, even soldiers. So, and I found a hole there. It was a raw wood fence. And that was the day when I saw my train, my deported train. And it just must have pulled into the station. That I see with great clarity, no difficulty of recall at all, colors, everything. It was a cattle train, and right in front of me, just about 2 tracks from the fence, stood one of the wagons. I could see some more because the hole was large, and it was just opened. It was opened by an SS soldier. That I noticed. Those were already German soldiers. I didn't see Hungarians there. And it was, the impression was terrible because it was terribly packed. I literally saw what you see in pictures, mothers with children, and people and old people and little children, and all. The impression was terrifying. It was really packed, compressed. And one man immediately jumped off. And I always remembered his face because he looked a little bit like my father, and he must have been something like mid-40s, closing on 50. I did not hear what he said to the German soldier, to that SS soldier, but his behavior was polite. He jumped off, and my feeling was, my instinct, or what I made out, that he was asking for water. And immediately that SS soldier, with the club of his rifle, clapped him down, and several times, to insensitivity, whether he died or whether he was later put on the track. And then I ran away. I was so scared and I was so upset. I never saw anything like this in my life. I simply ran away. And, this, I see it personally as the greatest tragedy of my life. That, there Jewish people were deported all around me. I didn't do anything. I panicked. Not even panic, not even fear. I just didn't know what to do. Now, my second direct experience was the crying in the night. It was summertime, and it was one of those very, very quiet nights. And I could not sleep for some reason, and there was enough moisture in the air. We were quite far from the railroad station, but somehow there must have been enough moisture to carry sounds. And I woke up to a sound of many people. My impression was literally thousands of people crying. I didn't know what it was first. It was a terrifying impression. And then I realized this is the sound of people crying. I remember even reflecting, that must be children, women, men, everybody, because it was that kind of a chorus, wailing and crying. And next morning, I talked to the several other people who were still left in the our Jesuit house and asked them if they heard something, our housekeeper, our custodian, and they all said that they heard it. And I think it was the custodian, a gardener, a janitor, who told me that those were the Jewish people crying because at our station, the Hungarian gendarmerie handed them over to the SS troops to be deported to Germany. And sometimes when this happened, the people would start to cry, and that would spread to the whole train, and this is what we heard that night. I didn't know about the death camps as such at that time, and I didn't know about the ovens, the burning. But I personally, at that moment, I felt a persuasion coming up on me that these people will be all killed. And again, you see, this is where I stress what I am trying to say. I wish I could live my life. Today, maybe I would be ready to then run in front of the train and lay down. And I don't want to sound dramatic. Maybe I would have, today I would call out or protest or risk being shut down or clapped down. And at that time, I was immobilized. It was just, you know, a feeling, not even a feeling of what can I do, there is nothing to do. Just running away, simply running away. It was beyond my experience. I was utterly unprepared.
A decree was passed to have all the Jews come to the marketplace with 25 pounds of personal belongings, and at that time we had my grandmother living with us. She was in her early 60s, but she broke her leg several years before, which never completely healed, and therefore she was limping. And when we had to enter the wagons for the transportation to a collection place, she asked my cousin in Polish to help her get on that wagon. And one of the German soldiers, who apparently understood Polish, said, "Yes, I'll help you," and he took out a gun from his holster and he killed her. I've seen it. Well, we went then.
May I ask you?
Yeah.
Now I understand that you are in emotional upheaval, remembering, but what especially you are moved now by? The memory of Zen? Could you tell us Zen reaction?
Well, the inhumanity, somebody asking for help, and the help is expressed as a killing action.
Did you then cry?
Did I cry then? I don't think so. I don't remember, but I don't believe I cried then. I was too petrified. And this is something really nightmarish. When we came to that camp, I can probably describe something for somebody who hasn't seen it, but has seen the film The Apocalypse Now. We came at night and we were surrounded by a group of people with yellow faces. Begging for scraps of bread, covered with blankets, and typical Muslims. We found out the following day, Work C was fabricating the chemicals, namely picrine, to fill the shells. This is the explosive thing that explodes in the artillery shells. And working with that chemical, your lifespan is only 3-4 months. Your skin turns yellow, you shrivel, and these were the picrinaires that surrounded us. I can say that the camps taught me a lot. I matured quite a bit, and I'm glad I didn't lose humanity in the camps. I felt that there is God, despite the terrible things that happened to us. I couldn't deny the existence of it, never. I remember after the war, when I was liberated in Theresienstadt, there was a big pile of religious articles feeling prayer books, and I just thought, where are the people who own them? And I picked a pair, never used them ever since. And I don't know who the person is who owned them. And the prayer book is an old prayer book, printed in Prague, Czechoslovakia. Who knows who had them? The book is falling apart. Must have been used many times. But I'm glad I'm using them. It's a big pile, mountain. Thousands.
I was a very, very mature, very sheltered little girl. And when the war broke out, I grew up overnight. I just really did. My parents were not even 40 years old, my mother, my father. They were young people, and my father went out one day to the drugstore to get some medicine, and never came back.
He never came back?
You know, the Germans went out, they were always trucks around, and they picked up people, and there was a blockade, he called it, like a blockade. So he went out to the drugstore, and he never came back.
He went out in the ghetto?
In the ghetto. It was quiet, you know, when we knew that the Germans are coming, we didn't go out on the streets, but nothing was happening. And the drugstore was like from here to the end of the building.
Did anybody see him?
No, he never came back, so we assumed that, you know, there was a lot of people. They were catching people like a dog catcher. You know, when a dog catcher goes out and catches dogs, anybody they saw on the street, they picked up. So my father was picked up.
But you don't know, you didn't...
Oh, we know he was
no,
picked
but,
up.
did anyone witness it?
So yeah, the people told us that he went out and he never came back. And then my mother and my younger brother was left with myself. And my mother was very dependent on my father. She really was, and she went to pieces when they took him away. She didn't care. She really didn't care if she lived or no. So I really had to watch over her because she kind of like resigned. You know, there was a curfew and you couldn't go out, and she didn't care. She really wanted to die. But somehow I was able to, you know, to watch over her. And then we needed papers, working papers. I remember I went over to a German and I said to him, "I give you a diamond ring. Give me papers for my mother." A girl of 15, who would dare do that? I did. And he did give me the papers. And he did buy a little time for them, you know. Without papers, you just didn't have a chance. And wherever I went, I saw people laying on the streets dying. Like you see the kids in Cambodia now. You see, that's when I look at those pictures, I get such a pain. Wherever you saw just agony and pain. Some of the Polish, there was the AK, the Polish resistance to the Germans, they were trying to bring in some ammunition. You had to pay it in gold. So people got together and we got gold, whatever we got, and we paid. But it was nothing, very little came in. Some of them were honest, some of them were not honest. You had to pay in advance, and they said to him, look, we're going to deliver you 20 rifles or 20 revolvers. And you gave him the gold, and some of them came in and some of them didn't. It was just that we were at their mercy. And with the food, the same thing.
You said they smuggled it in through the sewers.
Yeah.
Were these sewers large enough for people to...
Well, it wasn't that large enough, but you know, you managed. You were able to bring some stuff in. Some people were hiding themselves in the sewers too, because later on, when the Germans really set up, this is 1943, I was living in the ghetto till 1943, May 10th, you know, when the Jewish Warsaw uprising was, I was taking out almost one of the last people from the Warsaw ghetto.
Were you fighting with arms?
We were fighting, you know, what we did in the Warsaw ghetto, which is, you know, a lot of people don't know, and they feel that we weren't really very passive. But if you want to look at history, and I'm sure you know enough, that countries like France or Belgium or Holland, they went in a few days, the Germans came and took over. The Warsaw ghetto was holding up for 4 weeks. Even Poland didn't hold out for 4 weeks.
You said you were married.
I got married in the ghetto.
Why?
My father, before he was taken away, he felt like I was very young. He wanted to protect me. You know, a lot of people got married in the ghetto. Amazingly, everybody got married because he felt, well, you're going to die anyway, might as well. You wanted to attach yourself to someone. You wanted to have some connections with somebody else. My father was afraid if something is going to happen to him, I should have someone to help me, to take care of me. So I married. I was 16 years old when I was married.
Did your father pick out the young man?
You know, he was interested. He came in to, my father had a grocery store, my husband had a bakery. So he came in and he knew me. And I would have never married under ordinary circumstances. I don't think it would ever happen. But my father felt, look, he was 10 years older than I am, and he will take care of me. And we had it better because he was in his father was in the bakery business. Mm-hmm. So, you know, people used to bring down a mink colt diamond for a loaf of bread. So he had food, and my father felt that I'm going to be well taken care of if I marry him. So I was married in the ghetto. Sounds strange, but a lot of people marry in the ghetto. You'd be surprised, really. So I was with his family, my brother, we were together. My mother was taken a few days before, and then they took us all to Majdanek.
Your husband too?
My husband too, myself. So, but when we went to Majdanek, this was just the most terrible. As much as I experienced bad things after, but this was, they put us in cattle cars. And they pushed in, I don't know how many people, but they really wanted us to die. And we were in those wagons. I don't know how many people were there. But my brother died in my arms. My younger brother who was... And my husband's 2 sisters. There was not enough oxygen for all those people, and they kept us in those wagons for days. They wanted us to die in the wagons. You know, the cattle cars with very little windows.
How old was your brother?
Maybe 13. He wasn't even by my side. So, you know, when my brother died in my arms, I said to myself, I'm going to live. I must be the only one survivor for my family. I'm going to live. I made up my mind that I'm going to defy Hitler. I'm not going to give in because he wants me to die. I'm going to live. I'm going to just be very, very strong. And I went to Majdanek. And this is the interesting story, because when I came to Majdanek, and I went to, they put me in a block with 500 other women. Somebody told me my mother's there. My mother was taken a few days before, as I told you. So I went to see her, and my mother was there. So it's like I lost her twice, really. But she was very, very lost. She was lost. She was very passive, she was very lost. And they gave you one portion of bread and one portion of soup for the day. And my mother became very skinny, and she was very thin, and she was very, lost there. So I used to bring her my soup to her, and I just cut off a little piece of bread, and I said to her, somebody gave it to me, eat it. And I used to give it to her and run out, because if she would say to me, eat a little bit, I would eat. I was very hungry, but I felt that she needs it more than, I was younger. She needs it more than myself. So I used to give her the soup and run out, because I didn't want to be tempted that I should eat with her. And she was in the ghetto she was in the camp with me for about maybe 6 weeks, 2 months. Every few weeks they used to we select, have selections. And one day, just before they took me to Auschwitz, I walked down with her, and she went one way and I went the other way. And I had a friend which we were hiding out in the ghetto together. We were childhood friends for many, many years. She didn't let me. She pulled me back. I said, how can I let her go? And she said, Helen, you're not going to help her. You know where she's going. And I stayed. And then I went to Auschwitz. They sent us to Auschwitz. And I was the only one left from the whole family. My husband was separated from the beginning. The men were different. And Majdanek, one of my husband's sister, was with me. And she was such a strong girl, a beautiful young woman, maybe 25, 26. And we slept on the same bunk, and she developed diarrhea. And she was very, very cold. And she only wanted me to lay next to her to warm her body, but she just didn't feel anything. She had very, like, I don't know what you call it, dysentery or something. It was just awful. I had to lay next to her because she was dying. And she said, Helen, please stay next to me, warm me. And she was the last one. She went too.
She died in the bed?
She lied in my arms, just like my brother did. It wasn't a bed, it was a bunk for 5 people.
Did it have a mattress or straw?
Straw. And she was laying there, and the smell was so awful. I was dying, but she was so scared. She was old, that's all. She was crying I should stay with her. So I did. I stayed till she became cold and stiff in my arms. Sometimes at night, I lay and I can't believe what my eyes have seen. I really cannot believe it. I was in Auschwitz. Whenever I got up in the morning, the lines were unbelievable. The kids used to come in, stay in line, waiting to be burned. Whenever I used to get up in the morning, I said, my God, how can God allow this? The kids were standing in line. They didn't know. You see, what they did, they showed, when you went into the crematorium, you saw our camp. So they saw that people are working, and they were, like a camp going on. So when the people got off the train, what they saw our camp. The crematoriums were a little bit, like around the corner. There were lines. Every day there were lines of people and of kids. They brought a transport from Hungary once. Such little kids, they were waiting there. I just wanted God should strike me dead. I couldn't bear. I have nightmares about those lines.
What did you say when you first saw your husband again? What did you say to each other?
I don't know. It's, the man I married and the man he was after the war wasn't the same person. And I'm sure I was not the same person either when I was at 16. And later on, but somehow we had a need for each other because he knew who I was. He was the only person who knew. You know, you feel like you come from nothing, you are nothing, nobody knows you. It's a very strange feeling. You need some contact, some connection. And he was my connection. He knew who I was, and I knew who he was. And we stuck it out. We met, I don't know how many years. I don't know, we're going to be maybe 35 or whatever. We had 2 children. And he's very different. He copes differently than I do. And we're here to tell you the story, which is, I don't know. I don't know if it was worth it. I don't know if it was worth it, because, you know, when I was in concentration camp, and even after, I said to myself, you know, after the war, people will learn, they will know, they will see, you know, we will learn. But did we really learn anything? I don't know.